show. We've got Lord Zane of Society One. Thanks so much for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
So, like I said before we started, this is up my alley. I lived a wild, stripping, rock star, drug, Hollywood-infused lifestyle before getting into house flipping in NorCal. And I love the movie. So, okay, Everyone Dies, Rockstars Don't Count. When did you say, I have such a cool life, I need to get this on film, I need to make a movie? When did that start?
It was something that I was always aware of, but I didn't necessarily know it was possible really until the Anvil movie came out. And seeing the success of that and seeing their story really resonated with me because it actually was incredibly similar to a certain extent. I mean, they had this massive success with that big concert they played back in 80 something. And then they just disappeared up until like the movie. And it's kind of happened in the similar sense to my band that we reached a really interesting peak where we played Download in front of 80,000 people with System of a Down and Slayer and Slipknot, and on the same stage. Wasn't the same festival. We played the same day, same stage. We were opening up for them. And I made rock history. And then like maybe 5 weeks later, I think it was, we got dropped and I was homeless. So,
isn't that wild? There's a lot of people where that happens, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, you know.
You didn't have a hot stripper girlfriend to live with?
I mean, that's really getting in, like, I'd have to really think about it. I did have one and but she dumped me after I got signed, so that's a whole different part of the story. But
yeah,
basically what ended up happening is after all of that stuff happened and that movie came out and I started to see the success of that movie, I thought, it would be really interesting to tell a similar story with my band. But what ended up happening is after we got dropped, my career kind of started back up again. And I started doing these really massive suspensions where I was like breaking the world record and I was on Dave Navarro's show and I was playing my guitar with my suspension, and then we ended up doing, like, we came back with some pretty big music videos, like the Kill Me music video. So it fell out of my head for a while because things kind of started back up again. And then they fell off again, like as in all bands' careers. And I was directing music videos and working with all these massive stars like Zakk Wylde and John Five and Wayne Static and, Pretty Boy Floyd and DMC and, all these people. So again, it just got put on the back burner. But what I was learning through that process of becoming a mainstream director and learning how to make the music videos and all the new editing equipment, I started to understand movies a bit more. It wasn't until we got the quote unquote comeback tour, the really big tour in 2003, where all of a sudden I got this tour and we just planned on going on it. And I just got a phone call from a production company that said, hey, we're interested in doing this movie, about you. And I thought, wow, this is just the exact perfect moment because I got this tour coming up in like 3 or 4 months. And I thought, wow, this could be really interesting because just like the Anvil movie, you can tell the past story, but then they focused a lot on the present and how like bad it was, the little small clubs. I can tell my past story, but I can show it against, where the band is at right now because we have this tour coming up. And when that happened, it was just kind of like, bam, that's it. It's time. And plus at the time I was 48 when that tour was going to happen. And so how much longer was I going to wait? You know what I mean? By the time the movie was going to be done, I was going to be almost 50 years old, So it just kind of happened it's something that I wanted to do, but it happened at the same time this tour was happening and the funding happened to come in and the producer. And it was just, that was it. I just pulled the trigger and I said, yeah, it's finally time to tell the story and get out there and do this.
Were you concerned at all about airing your dirty laundry out to everyone or reactions from anyone?
Initially I wasn't. I just thought, man, some of this stuff, it was over 20 years ago. Some of it was at the 30-year mark because I've been in and out of the public eye and in the underground for 30 plus years now. It wasn't until we got into the movie that I began to understand that what I did was so far out of the ordinary and in this day and age considered so taboo and controversial still. And it was when the producer backed out of the movie, and then the investor backed out of the movie. And then we started having trouble with some of the people that were going to do interviews, like Rockstars, back out of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had people not wanting to sign release forms. That's when it started to occur to me that what I was doing was really something that you shouldn't do, or people perceived that you shouldn't do it, because it was so just out there and just walked this fine line where I think people thought, like, if they were involved with it, that maybe what happened to Diddy, 6 months ago is now going to happen to them. This was before the whole Diddy thing happened. But yeah, so initially I wasn't, but then when everybody started getting really scared and backing out, we started getting so much resistance. Then I thought, maybe this really wasn't a great idea. And I asked people, like, oh, should I include the part about the Hitler thing? Or should I include the stuff about, whatever, this, that, whatever. I mean, then I just said, you know what, like, if I'm going to tell the truth, I'm going to tell it through the lens of shock rock, and I'll include everything that is involved with that. There are other aspects of the movie that didn't make it, that just started to get so much more behind the scenes in terms of the political nature of the music business that I touched upon, but really shied away from a lot of that because we did have to focus it in on something, because it was a 30-year career. And as you can see, even with that lens of looking through, and in terms of shock rock, it was still over an hour and a half. So I think, I definitely did back off on some of the things, but definitely not on any of the salacious details of what went on. And anybody that hasn't seen it, that is watching this, can say, oh yeah, whatever, I've seen it all. Go watch the movie and then come back to me and say that.
Yeah. I resonate with this and what you're saying in the movie too, because when I worked in radio, I wanted to be respected. So I didn't go into details, and we had the FCC on us about how many orgies and drugs with the rock stars after the interview were happening. I was like, oh, that was a nice band. It was a good interview. I'm going to post a clip. Just last year, I started my own podcast. And also, as we age and get older and we move into suburbs, or maybe meet people that found their love of their life in high school and got married, and that's just what they've done. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but they haven't lived a wild life. I realized how rare it was, the past I lived. And this last year, I want to be unapologetically honest about all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I don't want to get anyone in trouble. I'll usually ask permission. Can I tell this story? And they'll say yes, and then I will. But I think it's important to be honest. And a lot of people haven't lived a full, exciting, thick life, and they want to live vicariously or figure out what it was like. So I love in the movie all of the sex. I'm really sex positive. I've performed burlesque for years and on stage. So I liked the women choosing to get up on stage and get naked and perform. I think it goes hand in hand with music. Have you had any of the women upset that there is proof of them getting naked out on stage, or things that they used to do sexually being in this film?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you notice, if you look through the film, there's multiple censorship on pictures with black bars across the eyes, a lot of video, faces blurred out. There was specifically a few women that I reached out to that I was dating at the time that are featured a little more prominently than others, that said absolutely not, married, kid, or kids. And yeah, there was a pushback on that as well. But there was also pushback that I didn't even expect from women. Like, there was a part in the story, a part in the movie, where there was a very famous story about something that happened with the guys from System of a Down and Casey Chaos from Amen. And I had lined up pre-meetings, the whole bit, with specific adult stars that were involved in this story. So it was a first-hand account of this story. And legally, you're allowed to allow people to tell their truth if it doesn't get to be too defamatory. So it would have all fallen in legally to being okay, but at the last minute, she backed out too. And it didn't necessarily even paint her in a bad light. It was just that, a lot of these women like you said, didn't want to be seen like that anymore because they had families or whatever. A lot of them didn't like me anymore. They had a lot of issues with me for whatever reason, probably stemming back from 20 years ago. And then some of them still were holding out hopes that these rock stars were going to still give them backstage passes, even though they were 40 or 50 years old. And, I wanted to tell them, you were gorgeous back in the day and I was gorgeous too, but we're 50 now, we're 55, we're 45. Like, you're not going to get that rolled out to you anymore. You know what I mean? And even those guys are probably married now, you know, but they were still holding, you know, they didn't want to like upset the bigger rock stars, you know, and it was kind of funny. It was kind of amusing. It affected the movie because I wasn't able to tell as many stories and as many truths as I wanted to. And they were really interesting, you know, like the story about Casey Chaos, you know, rest in peace, and Shavo from System of a Down, and all these other people. But it got to the point where I had to pull some of that back because the women wouldn't participate. If it was just me saying this happened and this happened and this happened, a lot of it wouldn't have had any corroboration from a third party. And I didn't really want to get into an issue where people were saying you're just lying, like they did in the Motley Crue book, where a lot of people said a lot of that was fabricated. So I really stuck to things that I could prove in the movie. Yeah. And I also stuck to things where that if a woman wasn't telling a specific story, I took it out. And then even if they were in the movie, I would blur their face out or put, you know, censorship over their eyes and stuff to be able to get away with it legally and not be sued, because there were a lot of them that were waiting.
Yeah. I mean, and I agree in one sense. I remember being in Hollywood in my 20s, looking around, seeing women in their 40s and 50s in the mansions or tour buses going, wow, that's sad. I hope that they get a family or leave one day. Well, now I'm in my 40s and it's different. I do have the house. I do have the kids and everything, but it's not about hooking up for me anymore. Like, I just got backstage passes sent this morning to Foreigner on Saturday. I just still like going and supporting the music and the bands and everybody that I've met along the way, and just kind of any way I can, whether it's a podcast, but not on my knees, you know, like back now it's like, and I think it's unfortunate when people don't want to be authentic and honest about their past, because you're going to end up dating or marrying someone that doesn't really know you and accept you for who you are. Now, I know everyone judges differently, you know, and men can be like, I hooked up with 100 people, and you're like, that's funny. And then women say it and it's thought of in a different light. But I just think I'd want to be with someone that loves me for me and that isn't going to judge my past and be like, oh, that's too wild. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, I just think to each their own. I mean, if women want to lie by omission, I don't have to date them. I don't have to marry them. You know, it's up to them. I mean, and if that's the path that they chose to take, I respect that. I'm not here to call anybody out or to, you know, make them, you know, feel disrespected or try to ruin their lives. So, you know, to me, I didn't really care. What bothered me was that some of them initially agreed. And, you know, time is fleeting, you know, especially when you pass 50, like you really feel that. And, you know, I don't have time to go meet with people and go have these meetings and have these discussions and go over these things when, you know, you're saying you're going to do these things and then back out, you know, and that happened a lot on this movie. And that's why it took 2 years to get done. It should have only taken a year. You know, it wasn't some extreme difficulty in terms of the technical abilities to edit this thing, but there was just so many people that just made it so much more difficult. And the women were a big part of that. The rock stars were a big part of that. Investor, producer, whatever. You know, it's a miracle that this thing actually even got done, to be quite honest. And I'm really happy that it did. You know, there's slight mistakes in the versions that are up on Prime and Thunderflix. And it drives me insane, but the mere fact that it's up there is up there. Luckily, there's an extended cut on the website, everyonedies.com, and that I think is pretty flawless. So that was the one that was supposed to come out, but it just got to be too difficult when it got down to the end of whether this thing was actually going to be able to come out or not because of all the opposition. It just got to the point where it was like, not only did I have to turn it in to get it done, but man, I was having like heart palpitations and then I'm not joking. Like I was almost admitted to a hospital because there was so much stress that was involved. Because when you're fighting 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people from your life coming out, and you've got every single penny invested into this thing in your life, it will take you down. This was the closest I ever come to having a nervous breakdown and actually having a physical adverse reaction to it. And I know that for a fact it's not subjective because I have this thing called an Aura ring. I don't know if you've ever heard of these before, but
no, I haven't.
This computer, and I can look at all my vitals, like my HRV, which is my heart rate variability, which has to do with your heart health and so on and so forth. And I was literally waking up, checking the numbers, which indicated I was within 5 milliseconds of having a heart attack.
Wow.
So, that was the problem that I had. So the women that were initially just like, no, screw you, fine, whatever. But the ones that were kind of bouncing back and forth between it, that's the only part that I had a problem. But you know what? Like I said, to each their own. It really doesn't matter to me. As far as the rock stars go, as far as, backing out, I get it. They hate me. I have no respect. I'm a total piece of shit. I absolutely get it. And I know it. And I know it for a fact because I've been going through it for 30 years now. It started, way, way back in the day and continues to this day. So same thing. When I reached out to a lot of those people, everybody except for Dino from Fear Factory, who's in the movie, Jay Gordon was kind enough to let me come to his studio. He was also at the premiere. And then a lot of those other rock stars that you see was from footage that I had from back in the day prior to them having an issue with me. And then obviously they wouldn't give the same interview these days. And then a lot of them just wouldn't even be a part of it, which is unfortunate because if they were, it would have been even a better movie. If they would have actually come out and told the truth, like, yeah, I know who Matt Zane is, and he's a complete piece of shit, and this is why I think so. You know what I mean? And this is why he has no respect. I mean, that would have made it even better, but they're not going to do that because they know it would make for a better movie. Older rock stars become incredibly business savvy. And for the ones that don't have managers, and the managers obviously are telling them, oh, Matt Zane's a loser. He's a nobody. He's a has-been. He was a never was. You're going to be in his movie and elevate it, So a lot of these people that I reached out to were just like, ignored me. A lot of them said no. A lot of them gave me the Hollywood no, where they wouldn't give me a response. And some of them said, yeah, I'll do it, and then backed out, just like the women.
I applaud you for having a project and following through with it and actually releasing it. A lot of people don't always do that. And then I've experienced adverse reactions too because of dating rock stars in the past. Rock stars' wives have said, no, you're not allowed to go on Stef's rock show or go to Rock 96.7 when I was at the station because she's dated someone I've known. So you guys might start, which is like, I don't want to date everybody. There was like 1 in 100 interviews where you actually connect with someone and you're like, oh, do you want to get a coffee and start dating? So it's been interesting how many wives or girlfriends have said you're not allowed to sit down. Like I'm an old chick. I don't even know what they're getting at or talking about. But I do want to get into the movie because obviously there's been so much, cancel culture and controversy and stuff around religion and the war and everything. So your Nazi uniform is such, we've seen Manson kind of do that and it's been out there. But what made you be like, okay, I have the balls. I'm going to use realistic, uniform and I'm going to rock it. I'm going to do it.
Well, I mean, the whole like the entire idea of drawing inspiration from that, but without actually utilizing authentic uniforms started, with Pink Floyd, in 1980 with The Wall. Roger Waters did it. Got up on the podium, the whole bit, did all the things, had the hammer, symbols. Then Manson went from there, basically copying Pink Floyd. But this was all like alluded to through similar colors and fashion. The difference, what I did is I actually went all the way and I played the role of Hitler. And I did it before Kanye West did it. And
he's on another level right now. It's just a circus. I like it to watch it.
It's a bit different, but the reason why I ultimately ended up doing it was because I felt that Manson was playing Manson, the guy Roger Waters was playing like this fascist guy, but they were kind of themselves, whereas I wasn't wearing these things. I wasn't wearing swastikas, being like, oh, I'm Matt Zane, I'm Lord Zane from Society 1. I'm wearing swastikas. I was playing the role of Hitler. I just looked at it in terms of as being an actor, because actors have played Hitler and have had authentic swastikas and all this other German memorabilia or outfits or whatever. So I looked at it like that. I wasn't promoting Nazism. The song, was about Hitler and about Jesus and about suicide through, various ways. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to play the role of Jesus. And that had been done before, and there's a billion Christians in the world, but nobody cared when Manson or King Diamond or whoever else, defamed Christianity, So I was like, I'm going to do that, to balance it out, but I'm also going to play the role of Hitler. I'm not going to back away from it. I'm going to do it, completely as if I was actually Hitler. And I thought he did a great job. Nobody knows this. You can't watch the original video anymore because it's been banned, but I actually snuck real clips of Hitler in there. So it would like flash back and forth and nobody ever could tell it was me or Hitler. That's how well I did, So wow. Kudos to the makeup artist and the set designer. It was just one of those things we did. But, it didn't really matter in the end. It got banned everywhere. I think like 2 websites reported on it. And then 9 years later, Kanye West, came out flashing the swastika. And, it's a big thing and it gets them like all this press. And even if people are announcing it, they're still talking about it. And it's just, and, I get it. He's obviously a billion times bigger star than me, but people are reporting on it and talking about it like it'd never been done before. And I'd already done it. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was a decade earlier, but hey, dude, once again, you're not doing anything new. You know what I mean? But I
do wonder if it has also to do with him being a black man.
And I think so.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's already a repressed, according to society, and then going for another party that's been repressed. So it's just a different concept.
And I love the fact of that. And I think that's what makes it really unique. And that's why I really dig it. And maybe you're right. Maybe it was just the fact that, he is a black guy. So, people, but it was like usually when artists do something that somebody else had done, there's usually a footnote or a reference, like that dancer chick. I don't know who it is. Maybe her name's like JoJo Siwa or something like that.
Yeah, I see her come up on my reels.
Yeah, she came out a bit ago looking like Gene Simmons. She's trying a new look out. And I get it, that's Kiss, but like when they reported on it, they said, oh, she's coming out with this new look and it's reminiscent of, Kiss, And it's just like they gave that shot out, that callback. Like there's always usually somebody in the press that's smart enough to say, hey, like this is a new thing and they're doing their own thing with it. And this is kind of like, this thing that, even when Manson came out in his heyday back in 95, 96, there was still a little talk of like, hey, Alice Cooper kind of, prefaced this, and it was even like when all the new punks came up and they were like, nah, Iggy Pop was kind of like proto-punk, they would talk about it. But with me, in a lot of respects, it's always overlooked, and I get it. I don't have a gold or platinum record and maybe that's their excuse, but it's just funny to me because it would make all the sense in the world if Kanye West came out and did that and the press, TMZ, whoever said, wow, this is amazing, a black man with all this Nazi symbolism and stuff. But it should be noted that in the rock world, there was a guy that already dabbled in this arena and then just went on and then did everything that Kanye West did. But they're making it like nobody ever had the balls ever to fly the swastika. And it's just, it's kind of crazy. I get it that Sid Vicious wore it on his t-shirt, but let's just be honest, that's on a t-shirt. It was in 1980. Like I put it in music videos and was the character and sang about it, the whole bit, so it was very similar to what Kanye West is doing now with Hi Hitler, the song, except he is a black man and he is, he's got 1 billion fans. So it could come down to one of those things or all those things, but it would have been nice to at least for TMZ to say like, yeah, but you didn't even have to say me or whatever. They could have said in the rock world, this was already, dabbled with, you know what I mean? But what are you going to do?
We've all been inspired by somebody else, and growing up when we're in those teen years where I think we're more susceptible to inspiration. We don't even realize sometimes we're grabbing little pieces of music and art that we see along the way. And I really wanted to get to, in the movie, there was a lot of sexual madness, a lot of fun, wild orgies, group sex and everything. After blurring the lines sexually and having all of these wild sex escapades, do you think has affected you now that you're older to want one person or want one relationship? Or what is it that you even are looking for in this day and age?
No, it really hasn't affected my life at all. I mean, I used to be more public about this, but we're not anymore because of the fact of my last video, which was called Lose Your Faith, when I defaced the Quran. But I've had the same girlfriend for 5 years. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
that's amazing. What does she think and feel about the
She,
movie?
she won't watch the movie, nor should she, you know, we
That's a good
discuss,
idea.
yeah. And she hasn't really, you know, we met at one of my shows. But yeah, she just stays away from a lot of that stuff because she knows now it's, you know, part of the performance and part of what people want to see. And it's part of my greatest hits. You know, I don't
Mhm.
have a hit song like Light My Fire or, you know, whatever, Metallica Enter Sandman. I have the dick mic, you know what I mean? I have these things I do on stage and things that happen off stage, you know? So it's confined to the show now. But it doesn't really bleed out anymore into my domesticated life. Yeah. And so, yeah, we're committed. We've been together for 5 years. It took me till 45 to settle down. I'm 50 now. So,
Yeah.
so mind you, you know, take that into consideration. But so I can't really say it's affected it at all because I have a very normal life as far as off the stage now. You know,
Mhm.
on the stage, it isn't. And there's times when I'll be on tour and stuff will get a little crazy and I'll call her and I go, you may see this thing that happened, you know, I'm just giving you a heads up. And she'll be like, you know, thanks for calling me or whatever. But it's all now. If she ever saw me doing that shit backstage, like in the movie, like I think I don't think we'd have an issue. But I mean, she's pretty tolerant of stuff that happens, you know, on stage even to this day because it's still pretty, you know, it's still pretty crazy and it's still pretty out there. So I'm thankful in that sense. But anyways, a lot of people don't know because we used to be very public, but then when the band started to come back and a lot of this stuff started to come back up, it was just kind of like, she's like, ooh, you know, take these family members off your social media, block these people. I don't want my work to see you because she's actually incredibly successful and very, I'm going to say like pretty damn high up, like in the top 9% of the corporate world. So yeah, we keep it a bit more separate. Like, yeah, obviously you had no idea. I mean, I'll talk about it now, but I won't name her or post about her anymore unless she says like, okay, well, you know, we can post this picture or do this or whatever. But there's not really a lot of public stuff anymore.
I mean, that's commendable of her to feel comfortable with herself in the relationship to be in that position. A lot of people don't understand that there's a persona, you know, like I like to dress up and talk about the wild times on air, but the majority of the time I'm in baggy sweatpant pajamas having green tea on my recliner with my cat. Like I am not that exciting and living some crazy life that I'm talking about that's from 20 years ago. And I think a lot of, when they meet you and they're expecting this larger than life, like crazy person. And you're like, no, I'm just tired all the time now. And I actually like the news and stuff like that. I think it shocks people.
There's a difference now. All the stuff that you see in the movie was real and it really was what my life was like. But you can't really live like that, I think, past 40 unless
You'll die.
I mean, I
Like
think,
a lot of my friends are dead. You know what I
yeah,
mean? That
yeah, you know,
that
like,
didn't slow down.
yeah, you know, like I think you'll die. I
You'll be
think,
strung out. Some of them aren't
yeah,
making sense. Some of them are kind of in like a delusional la la land. I feel bad.
yeah,
Like they never stopped.
yeah, yeah. You know, I think there's a danger to it. And my life is different now. It is absolutely different now. Everything that you saw in the movie is we try to don't try. It's all contained now and geared towards and focused upon the show. That's all it is now. It's the show. So I allow myself to go off and do the things at the show during the show, but then everything else out around it now is very, very different. And a lot of people, that's all that really does matter to them anymore because they say, you know, I saw the movie, then I wanted to come see the comeback show at the Whiskey, and I was wondering if that show was going to be anything like the movie. So we try to give them the movie as much as possible because the movie is our hit. You know what I mean? And what we did in the movie. But yeah, I mean, I wish I could say that my life was more exciting now. It is on show nights. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, but
But no, but we have to take care of our bodies
well,
mentally,
yeah,
physically, everything. You know what I mean? When you get older, you don't recover. And now it's a little bit like, how can I be healthy and have fun on stage sometimes? But you know, you want to have longevity. You don't want to go soon.
yeah, you know, like Doug, for me, you know, I let go still when we're doing the performances, when the band's up there doing their thing. But yeah, the rest of my life, it's not only changed because of my age and because of the times, but it's also changed because of the fact of just how the world works now, and how you fit into it in terms of an artist. So much of life now is geared towards social media, so if you're not involved in that, if you're not involved in still making music and videos and movies, and now also all the other social media aspects, you're not going to have a career anymore. And that takes up a lot of time unless you're Five Finger Death Punch or Metallica or whoever that has a social media manager, and editors and doing all these things for you. And I want to do all the same things that all these big bands do, because that's what you have to do to even be relevant. But I'm only me, like I have my studio here, and it takes up a tremendous amount of time now. So I wish that life was a little more exciting than it used to be, but luckily we still get to do the shows, which are incredibly exciting still. But also, I just wish that there was just a little bit more of the way that things used to be, but things have changed and there's no turning back the clock. Like what a lot of kids don't realize is that, and you'll know this because it sounds like you're only a little bit younger than me, is, back in the old days, you'd go to the studio and you'd work all day, right? But you'd be working in the studio because there was no social media. There was barely an internet. And then as soon as that quitting time came, you were off. You were down doing whatever. It's the same thing with the shows. You do the show and then you were off. There was no meet and greets. There was no million pictures. There was not. It was time to go crazy. So you had a lot more time to be able to utilize and do all these things and get in these adventures and all this insanity. And you just don't have it, anymore in these days. But look, let's just be super honest and like bottom line. I'm 50, and it's just, that's just a different world, and I don't want to admit it. But it just,
the energy level, it's a real thing though. I get tired. Like I'm like, I want to go to the afters, and then I'm like, but I'm tired. I'm gonna go to bed. I
have a lot of energy still, and I'm in pretty good health. But
you look great. I would have thought you were, 40s too. Yes. So like, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, but it's still like it's. I hang out with a lot of younger people because I develop. Artist. I'm developing an artist right now named Valley Riot. If you want to go check her out, I work with a tremendous amount of young bands in my video production company. So I'm around a lot of younger people, and I'm tolerated, but I'm still looked at as the old guy, despite everything that I've done and despite that I've had a life 50 times crazier than all of them. And you just learn. You're not who you were, and it doesn't matter how big of a rock star you are. Like at some point, you're not hanging out with the 20-somethings anymore. I mean, I don't want to pull the curtain back or give any like behind the scenes footage, but I think the only rock star around at this point that's even really coming close to that is probably Till from Rammstein. And I only know that because I knew somebody in his solo band. And I asked, like what that, and he's like, dude, like, I'm surprised that guy's still alive. But even at that level, with all the stuff that he's doing, how much of that is organic and authentic, and how much of that is because he's just spreading the money and the fame around? And these people are just, and again, it's tolerating him because of the fact that he brings all these things in. And I never wanted to be in that situation. I was in the situations that I was in the past because I was cute and young and cool and hot and doing all these great things. Those women wanted to do those things. They wanted me to be there. It was all consensual, where I think you cross over at a point in a man or even in a woman where it may be consensual, but it's being tolerated because of your wealth and your fame. And I didn't want to be one of those old guys that had the young girlfriend or having the young orgies with these girls because I'm buying them Louis Vuitton bags and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? Now, don't get me wrong. I shouldn't complain. Like when I met my girlfriend, she was 28. You know what I mean? And I was 45. So she's like 18 years younger than me. You know what I mean?
I like him younger too. I like him really. I just feel like I match with younger men normally.
Yeah.
But to keep up with me.
but that's one woman, you know, and she doesn't tolerate me being an old guy. And she's very open about it. She's like, look, you're in very good shape for being the age that you are. You actually have more energy than I do. So this will work, you know, but you kind of get what I'm saying. So, I mean, I do think there's probably a couple dudes, maybe only one, honestly, maybe only Till, because I do hear he's like going off still, like living that lifestyle.
I just saw him at Aftershock and he had a great performance in October and he was partying.
Yeah.
Still.
So, you know, I'm not lying to you.
No, yeah. And I can't, because I have to interview. I can have 2 Jack and Cokes, and after that, I'll have 6 or 7 bands for the day, and I'm just mentally drained if I have more drinks than a couple, and then I have to get up and do it for 4 days. But he was still raging, you know, and really cute young women.
That's exactly what I heard. And, you know, part of me, again, when I was younger, anticipated me to be somebody more like him. But the older I got, I just don't have the ability to, like, psychologically to be able to overcome the fact that all those people around him, for the most part, are again around him because of the things that he has, versus who he actually is. And again, I don't know for a fact, I'm only speculating, but let's be honest. Like, you probably remember when Hugh Hefner was alive and he had 10 girlfriends, lived at the Playboy Mansion. Yes, he was still able to live that lifestyle, and he was having the reverse gangbangs up in his room at night with the Viagra. But were they there for the man that used to be that was Hugh Hefner, or were they there because of the money and the fame? We all know the answer.
I partied at the Playboy Mansion for a while, and I interned at Playboy Radio in 2008, and I hooked up with Cooper Hefner. I know I talked to his dad for a little bit. He was so deaf, he could not understand anything I was saying. He just kept saying what over and over and over. And I remember looking at how gorgeous he had the twins at that time. And I'm like, they're so gorgeous. How are they banging him at the end of the night and doing this? Like, I was thinking about it. Like, I just got to do it, you know? And I was young. I was like 25. So I was like, I got to bang Q to bang. And then I turn over and I talk to his son, and he's really smart and really cool and not deaf. And I'm like, no, I'm going to go bang his son. Like, I couldn't have sex with somebody that I wasn't physically, mentally attracted to, no matter what they've done. I don't know how people do that.
So, I mean, you know, that's the way that I thought about it. I didn't want to be a dude in my 50s and then ultimately 60s where it was like, okay, you know, I still have the 2 chicks or the 3 chicks a night or whatever, but they're not here and they're not having a good time. They're just, you know, I don't want to get graphic, but putting the lube on and just doing the thing.
Doing what they need to do.
You know, and that's not what my life was about. Like, when I was with women and had those parties before, you know, again, not to be crude, but they were getting wet because they were into it. You know what I mean? They were dropping.
And you can tell when somebody's into you.
Yeah, you know, and that's what I got accustomed to. And I don't ever want to be on the opposite end of that. And that's going to happen. It doesn't matter who you are. Like, Madonna has a super young boyfriend, but let's be honest. Like, you really think that he's enjoying that? You know what I mean? I mean, there's Viagra involved. I think that,
and Cher. And I'm like, you know, of course, do we want to be physically attracted to our partner? Yes. But I can also be attracted because I'm mentally turned on by their intelligence level, and other things can like make me turned on by my partner. But there's no way in a 40-year age gap there is sexual attraction going on. You don't even have anything in common. You don't even know what a pager is or what happened or what do you talk about when there's not much of an age gap? But are you guys going to come to Sacramento at all? Are you guys going to come up to NorCal and perform?
We were in Sacramento. We finished the last tour, I believe, in Sacramento, but that was 2 years ago. In the movie, that's where I fell off the stage at the end. That was in Sacramento. So we
saw you guys did Fresno too. You know?
Yeah. So we were there. But now, you know, we're facing a whole different level of backlash with the shows and the touring. You know, the movie came out and the phone's not ringing, you know, so you
think they're more afraid that you could get naked and wild? And like, I used to host Miss Rainbow. It was a contest from 2009 to 2011 where I just had girls at the Rainbow. They'd be porn stars, a lot of them, you know, so they'd flash their boobs and I'd ask them their favorite sexual position and stuff like that. Well, I asked the Rainbow, hey, I'm starting a podcast last year. I'd love to come back and host the Miss Rainbow again. And they said, we want nothing to do with women showing their tits with alcohol and sexual question and sexualizing women anymore, which it used to be so popular. Like a lot of people would come and it's a bummer that I don't know if it's Me Too movement or just the internet or whatnot. People are so afraid to blur the lines and push the boundaries now, which that's why I wanted to go out. I want to see hot girls being crazy with rock and roll music. Like I don't like how reserved it's gotten.
Yeah, but we're old. I
Yeah.
mean, there was a clip up on TikTok just the other day, where somebody threw panties or a bra up on Ronnie Radke's stage from Falling in Reverse.
Yeah.
And he stopped the whole show and he's like, I'm not into this. This is disgusting. Don't do that. We don't do that at this show, And he's supposed to be the most controversial dude around right now.
He called everyone out. I like Ronnie just because he's been on my side, but I know if you get on his bad side, watch out.
I think he's incredibly fascinating and interesting, and I follow him on TikTok for the same reason. So there's nothing that's not an issue. But I'm just saying, think about it. Here's a guy that's supposed to be, this dude, incredibly successful, worth millions of dollars, sells out arenas, and he's scolding people for throwing bras up on stage. So that just gives you an idea, I think, of where sexuality is in terms of music right now. It is fought against, and it is not accepted, and it's just the way I think people, a lot of it, are just afraid of it, and they don't want to. They saw so many people go down, the Harvey Weinsteins. They almost got Marilyn Manson. Obviously, all the stuff that's going on with Diddy. They got Ron Jeremy. All those people that got Me Too'd and stuff. But it's really not done yet because they're still in the middle of doing like what they're doing to Diddy. Right now.
I'm so disappointed by it all. Ron's been a friend for several years. He came as a guest judge to Miss Rainbow, and he came over to my house for the interviews on radio. And in my opinion, because I lived in that lifestyle for at least 10 years hardcore, the women know what they're getting into. They know what they're signing up for. They know about the party that they're walking into. And what I see is women that are disgruntled, upset they didn't get a part, upset they didn't settle down, upset that they're like old and single. And all of a sudden they wake up and go, you know what? I didn't like that. I was against that. So I'm going to go try to do a lawsuit or, get famous for complaining about this, when I would never meet a man alone in a hotel room and not know that sex was on the table. Why aren't we in a public restaurant with tons of people? So all these women that are like, oh, I met Harvey Weinstein and Ron Jeremy and C.K. Lewis in a hotel room alone, and then they did something overtly sexual. That's what a hotel room is for. I get flack. A lot of women do not like my stance over the years, but I just think it's genuine. I would never put myself in a position where I'm alone with someone unless I want something to happen. It blows my mind. I don't think these people are guilty. I think, are they swingers? Are they crazy? Did they do some drugs? Did they blur the lines? Yeah, they had fun. And these women stay too. Okay, the women that complain, they'll go back and they'll stay for years on end and then go, oh, it was so bad. Well, if it was so bad, why did you keep going back for more? I don't understand this.
Yeah, I mean, from my own personal experience, when I've encountered it a little bit, and I just think a lot of it's just buyer's remorse. Mm-hmm. I really do. I think a lot of them were into it at the time, but I think it's exactly what you said. I think you're really correct when a lot of it doesn't turn out the way they wanted it to, because it just, for whatever reason, life, and then they get upset by it, and they're like, I'm gonna get my pound of flesh now, in this way. Weird. Like, they gave a pound, now they're gonna try to take a pound. And a lot of them were really successful in doing so. And it's unfortunate because I do think a lot of the guys, and I do know a lot of these people personally, I don't think that they were great people, but I don't think it was anything worth losing your entire life over and going to jail. The one person I'm incredibly surprised that got out of it was Manson. That I can't believe they didn't get him, because they got Ron, they got Harvey, and they were going after Manson. I'm surprised that Manson, managed to sidestep all that stuff.
And then I'm friends with Manson's old manager. And so I just heard all the stories from, and they were wild. They were crazy, but he was going through substance abuse issues. So I'm also not completely blaming someone that's not in their right mind. I interviewed him though in San Francisco at the Warfield in 2014, and he was very respectful, very nice, charming guy. So that's like the only little 20 minutes I've had with him. But someone that I have always been standing up for that can no longer come back in the United States, that they went after hard. I mean, in the beginning was Joe Francis, the creator of Girls Gone Wild, was my second boyfriend in 2004. And he again treated me like gold, just was a sweetheart to this day. We just catch up all the time, and he's a friend of the show. And he's in so much legal trouble for women that begged him to get on his bus and begged to hook up with him, that then later have filed charges against him and claiming it was forced. When, let's be honest, Joe's a multimillionaire and a good looking guy. He could get any woman he wants. Why would he want to force anyone to be with him? So there's been a lot, and it's scary. To be a man in this day and age, I think is kind of scary. You're like, is this woman really into me? Is she going to be authentically down for me? Is she going to use me? Make up some false story that it wasn't a mutual situation later. And then women come after me when I go, well, I've seen the dark side of women. And I'm just scared that you're right. I'm not saying all of these people are A+, give them a Purple Heart Award in the military. They're just who you want your son to grow up to be. I'm not saying that, but these people are not rapists with devilish ill intent. I think that the women, like I said, didn't get a relationship or whatever they wanted out of it, or fame. And then you're right. I like your buyer's remorse statement of now they're ready to go. And they're like, well, how do I hurt their name? Because I now was just a notch in their belt and I'm out. They didn't take it as like, you know what? That was a beautiful experience. What a cool, incredible experience that I got in this world that a lot of people don't get access to. And how can I support that person now from afar? I don't understand why more people don't feel like that.
I just, again, I think people they get very resentful when they don't feel that they got back what they felt what they were owed and what they deserve. And that's the majority of people. But, what are you going to do? I think that if I was more famous and had more money, I think there would probably be more people coming out of the work coming after me. But,
that's fascinating. That's fascinating.
I'm only, but a lot of people, and I know this for a fact because in the movie, if you remember correctly, in the beginning of the movie, they tried to get us kicked off that tour that we were on. And that came from a girl who called them and was getting this whole campaign to get us kicked off. And the only reason why she started that up is because when she saw the teaser for the movie, it was still being shot when we released a teaser announcing, hey, we're going to be shooting part of this on the tour. She's like, he doesn't deserve to have this and he shouldn't be going on this tour. And not only meaning the tour, but deserve to have the movie. So I was allowed to exist and not thought about and sought after in a vindictive way when she thought I didn't have anything going on. But the moment that the movie was announced, and then this tour, it was like, no, this is unacceptable because I don't have anything going on. He should have nothing else going on. And then that's when she came out of the woodwork to get me kicked off the movie. But I think it's the exact same thing with a lot of these women. I think of these guys and had that experience and then they just kind of fell off. I think they wouldn't come after him. It's just because a lot of it is, it's a jealousy, it's a resentment. And it's, like I said, it's a buyer's remorse.
Yeah, no, and jealousy is the dark thing. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. I feel like it was also a little bit of a therapy, fun, reliving old times, Stef's Rock Show. And I'm so excited to post this and get this up. Do you have anything else you want to kind of announce or tell everyone where to find you?
Sure. Like the movie's at everyonediesthemovie.com. That's really still what we're pushing. In the future, we have a couple of really cool projects that are coming out. We filmed our comeback show at the Whiskey A Go-Go. We're going to be doing a short mini rock doc on that comeback show. It's going to be called Rise from the Dead. That's going to be officially announced in a trailer for that in a couple of months. And then I have a really big project coming out that's announcing next month, which I'm not allowed to talk about yet. So I don't even know why I even mentioned that because there's nowhere you can go. But yeah, so the big thing right now is just go see the movie, everyonediesthemovie.com, and be on the lookout for the follow-up to that, the short Rise from the Dead. It's a really interesting comeback show at the Whiskey where we came back and did all the things that people wanted to see if we could still do them and get away with them. And we somehow did and didn't get arrested. And it's caught on film. So that has it's mostly music based, unlike the movie. And there's also interviews from the people at the Whiskey and fans and, all the other bands there that night. So it's a real interesting kind of, it's like the reverse of what Everyone Dies is. It's like music first with interviews, but primarily focused on the music. Whereas the movie was like just debauchery and insanity with little bits of music. And the big complaint we got about that movie was, why didn't you talk more about the music? So the follow-up, the unofficial sequel, Rise from the Dead, is very music heavy, very music focused.
A rock doc. Well, thanks so much for coming by. Next time you're in Sacramento, I got to come out and check a show.
I hope you do.